everyone, it's Ginger from Stamping the Cape, and I'm bringing to you today a quick inspiration I got from, of all places, the United States Postal Service. I never know when inspiration is going to strike, and I was looking for something a little different for Valentine's Day that I hadn't seen online already, and I was looking for at the postal site for the new stamps they had, because I always like to order some fun stamps to put on my cards. And they've come out with this new love stamp that you might want to purchase for your Valentine cards. It's really cute, and so that was my inspiration, and I immediately thought of the heart that's in the Meant to Be bundle that's in our current occasions catalog, and which is on page, I think it's page 6. It's right at the beginning. It is a bundle, but this is the stamp, and there are dies that coordinate with it to cut them out, and you get lovely little scallops, and there's a design similar to this that cuts out that little scroll work, so it's really a lovely set. But you know, you can use any kind of heart that you have. You want to make sure it's no bigger than 3/4 of an inch, because that's what I'm using for this. Otherwise it'll get a little too big. The other thing I'm using is another wonderful bundle from the Occasions catalog, which is the Well Said stamp set, and that's on page 27, and it is a little pricey for the bundle, but it is so worth it. You will get years and years and years and years of use out of it. As you can see, it comes with all these word dies, and then it has lots and lots of sentiments that you can combine for these lovely card combinations. Just let your imagination run wild. So I'm going to be using the love from that. And actually, there wasn't one stamp that said forever, but there is a stamp that has forever in it, and so I'll show you how I incorporated that. So let's just get started. I'm using the Stamparatus for the first part of this card. I thought it would be easier to line up those hearts vertically and horizontally. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 cardstock, and you're going to find the center point of this card. So at 4 1/4, the center is, and I'm going to try to eyeball, let's say I can do 5 1/2 here, would be 2 and 3, okay. So 4 1/4 is 2 1/8. So I'm lucky I have this lovely quilting ruler, and so I can see right through it. So I'm just going to put a little dot at 2 1/8. And then at that point, I'm going to measure the lengthwise of the 5 1/2, and the midpoint there is 2 3/4. So I'm going to put another little dot at 2 3/4, and I'm just going to draw like a hash mark. This is what they use when they're doing printing and whatnot to make sure they're in the right location for cutting and copying and things like that. So very lightly, and we can erase that later on, but that's my guide for where my stamp is going to go. So I'm lining up the cardstock at I'm using the grid paper that goes with the Stamparatus. It's very handy, and I'm lining my cardstock at the 1 1/4 inch mark down from the top, and it's 2 inches over from the left. And I've made a little reminder here so that if I want to make duplicate cards, I can just line it up. And actually, for this part of the card, if you're going to make more than one, what we're going to do now, I would recommend doing this portion of the stamping first, because we are going to remove the stamp off of the Stamparatus to finish the sides. So I'm going to line up the stamp. Now I need to remember that there is some extra rubber before the actual image starts, and I want to kind of have it close, but I don't want it right on top. So I'm just going to put it right on the edge, the rubber right on the edge of my horizontal hash mark there, and hopefully that will work out. So I'm going to attach that, and these are cling mount stamps, so they really now stay very well on your blocks and on the Stamparatus. You don't have to worry about any falling off. So the colors I'm using, I should have shown you first. I'm trying to reproduce the stamp with Berry Burst, Real Red, Mango Melody, and Gorgeous Grape. So those are the colors I'm using. And we're going to start with the Berry Burst. And I'm going to ink up my stamp. I'm going to come down and stamp at that point. Okay, so now we're going to turn our cardstock 180 degrees. You want to make sure your paper stays in the corner, your grid paper. Line it back up. If you've marked it, it's easy to find, but line it back up into that little corner. And you can double check and make sure, you know, you're close. If you're a perfectionist, you may not want to attempt this card because, you know, you may not be exactly straight and whatnot, but it still gets the effect. So I'm going to stamp again. So we have, and see my little hearts are just off slightly, but that's not going to bother me. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my cardstock down 3/4 of an inch. Now this grid paper is marked in 3/4 squares. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3. Now this part, you can see I've already positioned where I had it before. Sometimes this could make a difference depending on where you've put your stamp on your Stamparatus, but I'm going to double check, and that works really well. So I'm going to clean my stamp and close up my ink pad so we don't have an ink disaster here. And I'm using my Simply Chamois, which is great for just wiping off. And as I said, you can, hopefully you can see, you don't have to worry about these stamps coming off of anything. I used to only dab my stamps when they were on because I was always afraid they were going to fall off. But with the new cling mounts, they hold on really well. So I want to line this up using my magnet to hold my stamp in place, and I'm starting with the Real Red. And we're going to stamp that one. And then once again, I've marked my corner so I know where I need to line it up. Turn it 180 degrees. Line it up. Put my magnet on, and again, you can double check before you lay it down. It's good. Ink up my Real Red. And stamp. Okay, so we've got our vertical hearts going well. So now this is where it gets tricky, because I would say, like I said, if you want to do this, these two portions are the ones you want to do over, because every time I've done this, this side ends up being in a different mark. Now the last time I did it, this is where I had my step 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. But depending on where you place that heart on your Stamparatus, it's not an exact science when you're just placing it down. So what I do, you just never know where it's going to end up. So what I do is I've started it there at the 2-inch mark, and I'm saying, okay, so now I need to scooch it over just a little bit. So it's going to be at an 1/8, and it looks like I'm pretty close to where I was the last time, which I'm going to erase that so I can make new marks. But it ends up being, looks usually like you need to go in like an 1/8 of an inch, which 1/2 of a quarter is an 1/8 if you're not good at math. I'm going to see what this looks like. Again, placing that down. Nope, I need to go a little to the right. Just trying to get it in there best I can. And again, like I said, if you're a perfectionist, that's going to be, I think, pretty good. So I'm going to mark that corner of the card so I know the next time I'm going to be at the 2-inch mark and right at that point. So we're going to start this time with the Real Red. And I'm going to stamp one heart there. Again, I'm going to turn it 180 degrees, lining it up with that line where we were the last time, and the 2-inch mark up here. And once again, I'm just going to double check. I think I need to maybe, well, I'm going to leave it there. Okay, we'll go with it. We'll go for it. There. Okay, so now we're going to do our berry burst heart, and again you're going to come down 3/4 of an inch, and that's 3 of these little squares. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and we want to keep that same direction going. If you wanted, you could draw a straight line there, or you could just double check and mark it now. Or you could have just drawn a vertical line there to plan it. So let me clean my stamp, and we're going to move to the Berry Burst. And we're going to do that one. And 180 degrees. And line it up again with that mark. And you're down now at 2 3/4. Okay. Okay, so we have our vertical and horizontal hearts. And again, if you were going to do multiples of these cards, I would have just kept feeding them in and stamping these 2 units, and then change card, stamp another those 2 units, and then once you get the number you want, then do these portions, and then you do each color as you go along with how many cards you want to make, because resetting can be a little tedious. So now we're going to take the stamp off the Stamparatus to finish up the card. So the one thing with the cling mounts now, because they do cling so well, you want to just gently pick up the corner and peel it away, because you could tear, either pull off your adhesive in the back, or you could tear your foam, and you don't want to do that. So the best way to do it is to gently grab the corner and peel it up. You don't want to be too aggressive. So we're all done with the Stamparatus, and I'm just going to mount my stamp onto a block. And I'm using my foam pad because I want to make sure this ink all transfers really well. So I'm going to bring my sample in to remind me of where I need to go here. So let's close up the Berry Burst, and we're going to start with the Mango Melody. And I'm just going to, again, we're going to be eyeballing this, so I'm going to stamp 1 heart in Mango Melody in this location. And then again, we're doing 180 degrees. And another heart in this location. And clean my stamp, and we'll switch to the Gorgeous Grape. Do the same thing. Fingers in the ink. One thing, you want to keep your hands clean when you're working with Whisper White, because you don't want to be getting ink everywhere. Okay, so now we're going to do the Gorgeous Grape. So we want this one in this direction. So this one's going to go this way. And 180 degrees, and this one's going to go this way. So they're pointing at towards the center heart. So there you go. You've got your center. And now we're going to do the Forever. I'm going to show you how I did that. Now the stamp I'm using, as I said, is from the Well Said stamp set, and it says, "To my always from your forever." And I just wanted to get that forever. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Scotch tape and cover up all the words I don't want with the tape. And actually, as long as I keep my ink pad to the left here, I don't have to worry too much about if a little bit is exposed. So I'm using Memento Black. And I'm just going to ink this little Forever. Now there is a period because it's a sentence at the end, and I want to remove that. So if you can use the end of your finger to do it, or I've got a blender pen, and I'm just going to gently remove that black dot so we don't have it there. So now, thinking where your love is going to be, I'm going to put this just along here, and we're going to be using our new stitched rectangle dies. So I want to make sure it's not right on the edge. I want to give it a little bit of room there for the word forever. And I think we'll go right about there. There. All right. So now I'm going to mount this onto my card base. We'll put on the word love afterwards. I've got a 4 1/4 by 11 inch piece of thick whisper white, but you could do it 5 1/2 by 8 1/2, whichever direction you prefer. Grab this bone folder. And I mounted this on, oh, excuse me, we can't do that yet. We have to cut it. Okay, so we're using these new, they're the rectangle stitch framelit dies. They're kind of interesting in that they have a double track. Let me put one here. They have a double track of stitching, but what it does is it cuts the inside out, but then it leaves you with your outer piece with this stitch frame. They're very, very sharp, and I've had a little bit of difficulty getting them off cleanly, so I don't know how much of that outer frame you're going to be able to use. But I'm going to, rather than cut it in the center and save this frame, I'm cutting it right to the edge because I want this end to have a little more white space than the top. I want to off-center my center image. So the other thing I'm finding, and everybody's Big Shot is different, I'm finding that my the platform that comes with the new Big Shots, I found I couldn't get this die through it. I tried with different shims, it just wouldn't go through, but it will go through fine with the magnetic plate. So hopefully you have one of those, just to keep in mind. The depth of the Big Shot for everybody is different, so you may not have a problem with the, what is it called? It's the, as I said, it's the new platform, the Big Shot platform, the thin die with a thin die adapter. For some reason, this combination will not go through. It's too thin with this one and too thick with this one, so I don't know what the issue is with it. But and the other thing I'm going to do, let's see, we'll move this up here a little bit. And if you have, if your Big Shot platform, sometimes when my plates get curved, they don't actually hold real well. So I'll use double-sided, excuse me, not double-sided, removable adhesive tape. I've tried washi tape, and I find sometimes it's too sticky and tears my cardstock. So just to be sure it's going to stay in place. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to cut our love, if I can find it. Here it is. But before we do that, I'm using the multi-purpose adhesive paper or sheets, and I've cut a little piece that I'm going to attach to the back of my Real Red. And I've seen different ways of doing this. The way I do it is I peel back a little bit of the adhesive protective sheet, lay it down on my cardstock, and I always cut it a little smaller than my piece that I need, and then you just apply the adhesive to the back of your cardstock. Put your cardstock facing you, and we're going to use the love die, and I'm just going to stick that there, and we'll cut both of these at the same time. And I apologize if my table shakes. I haven't figured out a good way to keep it from vibrating yet, so I apologize. Close your eyes. There we go. Okay. Okay. So the tricky part, just like with a lot of our stitch dies, it really cuts into the paper, and this being thin whisper white, not the thick, you could get some tearing. So I try to be very careful, gently pushing the edge to try to pry that cardstock away from the die, and I'm actually just going to peel off this outer stitched edge. But you can see what I was talking about with this stitched edge. If I had a bigger piece, it would cut the inside, but now I would have this frame that I could use for another another project if I had centered it. So you don't really waste anything. You can see where I started there, and that was wrong. Okay, gently pull it off, and just left with this little piece. And actually, I think I'm just going to use my scissors if I can find them. I don't know, they disappeared somewhere. So I'm just going to snip off this edge here. There we go. All right. So now we can put this on our card front, and I've used dimensionals on the back of this, which are right here. And I like to put not just in the corners, because sometimes your cards, you know, if you have a large surface like this, they're going to bow in the middle. So I'd like to make sure the middle has some support, and I might even put an extra one on these sides. They're a little bit longer. So okay, all these dimensionals. I'm always better safe than sorry. Okay, so we're just going to lay that in the center as best you can of your card. All right, and we're just going to punch out get our love out here, and with the adhesive on the back, it's perfect because you don't have to worry about glue. You just peel off, stay in the camera shot here, you just peel off your adhesive protective sheet, and now you have your adhesive on the back. You can lay your word down, and I'm going to erase my little hash mark in the middle. And we're done. So, there you go. You know, it's simple enough to do. I mean, if you want to do this kind of technique with your Big Shot, again, if you're a perfectionist, you might not want to make this card because, you know, it's not perfectly lined. But overall, I think the appearance is great. So, hope you enjoyed this. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.